Hello students, today we will be reviewing how to write your ancient Greece meal paragraphs. This is what you will need. You're going to need some notebook paper, the same kind of paper that you've been using so far for paragraph 1 and paragraph 2. Now, one of the first things you want to do, you want to write down the sentence starters for the meal paragraph. This will just save you some time and it'll be easier for you to just write down on a piece of paper these sentence starters as a reference. So just take a piece of notebook paper and write these down. Now there are different parts of a meal paragraph, and I will explain to you what the sentence starters are for each part. The first part is the introduction. Now, for the introduction, you actually don't need a specific sentence starter, like the other parts of the paragraph. You are free to start the paragraph basically any way you want, but I will still give you some direction on how to start it. For the claim, you have these options right here, okay? You start it with therefore, for this reason, due to this, and consequently. Now remember that in order for the claim to be okay, to sound good, you will need to have the introduction for the paragraph first. And these are the sentence starters for the other parts of the meal paragraph. For evidence, you have according to, based on, as the author shows in, and of course for evidence, all of these sentence starters are followed by the source. And please remember that you will need the source for your paragraph because the source is important as evidence. If you do not include the source, then automatically you will get like a 0 for the evidence outcome. So please include the source. For analysis, you have these different ways to start. You can start it by saying this means that, this shows that, this demonstrates that, and this indicates that. And for link, you can start it by saying in summary, essentially, and it is now clear that. So hopefully you have written down these sentence starters on a separate piece of paper so that you can reference them. And I will reference these sentence starters throughout this explanation as well. So before we get started, you'll need to take some notebook paper, and basically you'll need 4 pages, and you will need to design it this way. It's actually pretty simple. You're going to have to take the first page, and what you're going to do is you're going to label it as on the top as introduction, and then make sure to draw a line just to separate the two parts, and then write claim, which of course is the opinion plus reason. On the next page, what you're going to do is you're going to write on the top evidence number 1, and then beneath that you'll write analysis number 1. On to the next 2 pages, you're going to write evidence number 2 on top, and then analysis number 2. And of course, if you can see, there's a line included there to divide them. And on the last page, make sure to write link. So, of course, you do not have the meal paragraph packets that I've given you before. Obviously, we are under quarantine, so you don't have access to these, and I can't print them out and give them to you. So you'll have to use notebook paper or a notebook to organize your papers. But please start by organizing the papers like this so that it is easier for you as I explain. The main idea begins with the introduction. So basically, the introduction of the meal paragraph is you talking about the topic of that paragraph, but before you start talking about the claim. For example, if you're focusing on rights in this meal paragraph, such as the political rights of ancient Athens, or maybe you're focusing on the economy of ancient Athens, then that's what you want to talk about in the introduction. So let's take this example of rights and economy in order for you to understand how to do the introduction. So you can do it very simply just by, and I gave you 2 examples here, but remember it all depends on what the claim is about. So for example, I wrote here, rights are an important part of a society because. Also, the economy is an important part of a society because. So whatever your topic is, you can simply start the paragraph by just talking about why that topic is important to a society. And if you just say it in your own words, it'll just be a nice little introduction for your meal paragraph. Now, for the claim, to be perfectly honest, the claim, it is going to be much easier for you to do the claim if you did a good job on writing your thesis. Okay? So, if you have not done paragraph number 2, where you talk about government and you include the thesis, if you have not done that paragraph, then I'm going to ask that you stop working on the meal paragraph and complete paragraph number 2. That's the only way you're really going to be able to write a good claim in your meal paragraphs. So let's continue. So basically what I'm going to explain right here is how to transform your thesis from paragraph 2 into your claims for your meal paragraphs. So let's say, for example, that this is your thesis. Therefore, ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta because Athens had a better economy and they had a more democratic society. So, as you can see, the first part of the sentence of the thesis is the answer to the question. So we're looking at option 2 as an example, and we're saying that the answer to the question is ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta. And as you see here, you have the 2 reasons that support this opinion. Okay, we have had a better economy, and we also have had a more democratic society. I'm going to walk you through how to turn this opinion from the thesis and these reasons and kind of divide them into separate claims for separate meal paragraphs. So right there you can see the reason about had a better economy then becomes the claim for meal paragraph number 1. So you can also see that the opinion that you wrote, like the answer to the question right here, you're going to start the claim in the exact same way. Ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta, and right here it's the same thing. Therefore, ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta. Okay? And then you would just take one of the reasons that you included in the thesis. It's highlighted yellow, and right here it is the same reason. And you will use the thesis again for when you're doing your other meal paragraphs. See right there? Same process. You're going to include the same opinion. Ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta. And you'll see it's the same one right there to begin with. And then, of course, you're going to include the other reason that you wrote in the thesis. This one right here, that it had a more democratic society. And right there, Athens had a more democratic society. Alright? So if you have 2 reasons in your thesis, then those easily become your claims for the meal paragraphs. You'll see right there. You have claim number 1 and then claim number 2, all ready to go for your meal paragraphs. And if you have more than 2 reasons, then those set up the organization for having more than 2 meal paragraphs. So it really just depends on which reasons are the strongest to help you write your essay. If you wrote your thesis and you have, for example, 5 different reasons, well, I am not asking you to write 5 different meal paragraphs. So I would suggest choosing the strongest of those reasons, maybe the 3 strongest, and focusing on those reasons in your meal paragraphs. So choose the 3 strongest, and then those will become the 3 meal paragraphs. Alright, and this is an example of a claim, and this is how you would write it on your piece of paper. And as you can see, I did include a sentence starter, so you have some choice in the matter. But basically it's the same as the claim that we wrote based on the thesis in the previous slide. Ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta because Athens had a better economy. And so you'll just basically choose the sentence starter that you like the most. So right here, you'll see these are different sentence starters. Maybe I'll say this and think, okay, I want to choose this one, for example. Okay, and that's the one I will include. There you go. For this reason, ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta because Athens had a better economy. And that will basically be the claim for the meal paragraph. So far you've completed the introduction and the claim. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the evidence. You should already have your evidence ready to go before you start writing the meal paragraphs. It is part of the process of finding information for PBAT paragraph number 2. If you haven't done that already, then I suggest you look at the Ancient Greece Evidence website to find this information. And of course, this is located right here in your Google Classroom. Click on Evidence website right here, and it'll open this up. And as I reviewed before, you'll just click under Athens or Sparta, or you can also click over here to do a search on whichever topic you're looking for. Maybe economy, maybe slaves, maybe women, maybe voting. Whatever it is you're looking for, you can do a search like that here to help you out. Now when you're writing your evidence, this is an example of what the structure will look like. Okay, now let's break it down so you understand exactly what I am looking for when I say that your evidence structure has to be correct. So the first part is a sentence starter. So for this example, I chose according to, but you have other choices as well. You can also choose to use based on and as the author shows. Now, right after the sentence starter, you need to include the name of the source. Okay, so right there, you see that in this example, the name of the source is the British Museum. I cannot stress this enough. If you do not have the source, you will not receive a grade for this outcome, and it just affects your overall grade. It is very important when you're doing work that is based on information that you researched. It is very important that you include the source of this information. It's important in history class, important in science class, but it's also important in life so that we can avoid misinformation being spread in the world. And I know I don't have to give you any specific examples of this because you see them everywhere on the internet, on Facebook, that kind of thing. Now, the other part of this evidence is the actual information or details. So right here I gave you an example and I just took the quote of this evidence and included it here, but of course you can also summarize it. And here is an example that connects to the claim we wrote earlier that is connected to the economy. And of course it's missing a sentence starter, so of course you would need to reference the notebook paper that you wrote earlier with the sentence starters. Here are the different sentence starters available for this evidence. So I believe for this example we simply chose according to. So the completed evidence would say, according to History Alive, the ancient world textbook, Athenians bought and sold goods at a huge marketplace called the Agora. There, merchants sold their goods from small stands. Athenians bought lettuce, onions, olive oil, and other foods. So this would be an example of your completed evidence in the meal paragraph. And remember, you need 2 pieces of evidence in each meal paragraph. This is just good practice in general to provide more evidence to support your ideas, but it is also a requirement once you move on to 11th grade to have 2 pieces of evidence in your meal paragraphs. So this is good practice. The analysis. As we've reviewed before and earlier in the year, the analysis has sort of different levels that will demonstrate deeper understanding of the topic. So at the first level, we can say that the analysis basically needs to explain how the evidence connects to the claim. That's like the most basic function of analysis. After that, specifically about this topic, the analysis should explain how the evidence also connects to other parts of Greek society or government. And then if you want to really demonstrate that you understand deeper connections, you should explain how the evidence connects to a specific example from the world of today. Now, let's look a little bit at analysis from the examples we have already created. So on the left side, you see here's the example of the claim we have developed. Therefore, ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta because Athens had a better economy. Alright, and then on the right we have the evidence that we think connects to this claim. According to History Alive, the ancient world textbook, Athenians bought and sold goods at a huge marketplace called the Agora. There, merchants sold their goods from small stands. Athenians bought lettuce, onions, olive oil, and other foods. So at the most basic level of analysis, you have to explain how this evidence connects to this claim. Here is an example of analysis that I wrote to explain this connection. And of course, here's an opportunity for you to choose which sentence starter we should use for this analysis. So you would go back to your resource, the page. And I think for this, we are going to use, this indicates that Athens had a more effective government because they had a better economy. The government established a better system of trade in the city using the Agora. People traded products there, such as lettuce and onions, so that people could make money. this caused a better economy for Athenians, and that is why Athens had a better government than Sparta. So on this first level, you see that you're establishing a connection between the claim and the idea and the evidence, okay? The evidence is about the economy, so you're trying to connect it to the claim of Athens had a more effective government. And then in the second part, we'll see how it develops. The government established a better system of trade in the city using the agora. People traded products there, such as lettuce and onions, so that people could make money. Now, right here, it gives you sort of a summary of what the evidence is about, which is also important in analysis. And then in the last part, we see this caused a better economy for Athenians, and that is why Athens had a better government than Sparta. So here is like an example of trying to connect the evidence to other ideas about the topic of Athens and what a government is. Now for this analysis, this includes just 2 of the points. I think this analysis would be considered like a strong competent, and if they included a little more detail, then it would be more of a good. But of course, I cannot give more than good for this analysis unless it included an example from the world of today. Now, as we mentioned before, you need to include evidence number 2 pieces of evidence. So the process for that evidence is the same as we reviewed for evidence number 1. And of course, analysis number 2 would be the same as the process for analysis number 1. For the link, you must summarize the main ideas of your meal paragraph. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can summarize it in your own words, or you can simply repeat the claim. It's really your choice. So right here, we give you an example of what a link would look like. You'll see here that we have an opportunity to find a sentence starter. So once again, we look at the sentence starter guide. We have these 3 choices: in summary, essentially, and it is now clear that. Let's go with the second choice, essentially. Essentially, ancient Athens had a more effective government than Sparta because Athens had a more developed economic system. And that's basically it. You don't really need to give much more information than this. It is just a simple summary of what the meal paragraph was about. After you're done with all the parts, of course you will need to type up the meal paragraph and submit it on Google Classroom. So you will go to Google Classroom and you'll see here under this section we have meal paragraph number 1 assignment, meal paragraph number 2 assignment, and for those of you who think you're going to do 3 meal paragraphs, right here, but of course it is optional. So you will click on this, open the document, and begin typing the paragraph right here where it says start here. And after you're done, you will click here where it says turn in, and you'll be finished. Well, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful.